Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics video on the channel. Trade Talk is back for 2025, the first episode of the season. Round one is done and we've got some trade in and out players. So it's been a while since we've done this and one of the favourite videos on the channel weekly. So hopefully you guys are going to enjoy hopefully some more trade talks in this upcoming season. But yeah, we've got plenty of players to be discussing. I normally go through the top 10 most traded in and out players, but I think there may be a couple of extra players to be touching on today. So let's get started. Make sure you do smash a like on the video. Takes 2 seconds, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Without further ado, let's get stuck straight into the most traded in players ahead of round 2. So starting at number 1 is Sam de Koning. No surprise there. He obviously had a massive game against Fremantle. 124 points and break-even's now down at 16. So I think he's a good option. I guess the only question I have is obviously his role was still a little bit, obviously not the full-time ruck role. I think Liam discussed it pretty well last night on our pod, saying that he takes the CBAs, takes a lot of the contests on the wing and around the midfield, but then he'll go off and Blitzers will take the ruck, and Shannon Neal does a lot of the forward 50 ruck contests, and normally it's Blitzers in the back 50 or sometimes de Koning. So Geelong have said though that they are happy to chase their sort of change their rucks weekly. So I don't think he's a lock to be bringing in. A very good option because of his low break even. You bring him in, okay. If he doesn't go great over the next 3-4 weeks, you can still trade him. He's going to make money. He's going to be like, what, 700k, right? Like by the time he makes some money. St Kilda this week's a good matchup. I expect him to go well. And even if he isn't playing this full-time sort of, obviously, ruck contest role, St Kilda could get a lot of +6s. So he could still put up a good score. It's these 2 matchups after that are a little bit tricky. Brisbane, obviously McInerney, Darcy Fort, then going into a Max Gawn. So just saying to flag if you are bringing him in. If you started him, though, you're not obviously great. You've got that good score, that cash gen there. And if you're trading into him, Sam Taylor to him makes a lot of sense. And even a Perryman, you could say, makes sense as well. So I don't mind Sam de Koning. Unfortunately, though, I'm a nuffy. And I don't have these next 2 guys that are in terms of the trade type. So Xavier Lindsay and Levi Ashcroft. We'll start off with Xavier Lindsay, who has been brought in by 12,500 coaches. And I didn't actually say de Koning was being brought over by over 20k coaches. Xavier Lindsay, though, -8 break even. 94 last week was fantastic. And I've got a feeling that score could have been a lot bigger. If it wasn't for the weather, I think he would have turned up. I just think that the wet weather was a big factor. Also, the fact it was a close game. Maybe they didn't really use the wings as much. But I think if it wasn't raining, I think he would have turned up, would have had more marks. But the fact that he scored that well against GWS, who are typically a fairly tough matchup, really across all positions. But now their run opens up, Melbourne. That run from rounds 2 to 8 is very, very nice. So Lindsay could have some really good scores coming up here. As I said, -8 break even. If he scores a 7, he's going to go up at 69k, right? So I think for me, I'll touch on Lindsay again after chatting about Ashcroft, but I feel like these 2 guys are must-haves. And Ashcroft, 6.3k coaches jumping on him more so because everyone's already got him. Everyone jumped on. I unfortunately wasn't able to, and I'm sure there are a few of you that also didn't get to jump on him. But yeah, he looked fantastic. Score of 84, break even 2, 66 he scores. He goes up nearly 60k. I think he'll go better than that against West Coast. I could see him going really, really well and potentially even putting out his first career ton for Brisbane, So I think that for my own team, I'll go through my trades after. But I think if you don't have Lindsay and Ashcroft, I think it's a priority to be getting these 2 in. I think if you don't have one of them, I think that that's your priority. I think that you need these 2 guys in because these guys are going to make bulk cash very, very quickly. And if they put up another big score, that's only going to further enhance their cash gen. And if they were to both go tons, they're going up 90k probably each. So, yeah, for me, I think that these 2 guys are the must-haves of the week. Out of the 2, who would I prefer if you don't have both and you could only get one? Levi Ashcroft for me is the one. The matchup, I think it could be instant reward, getting a rookie and also getting some points. But I think you've got to get both. Like I've got Sam Taylor as well, right? I'm keeping him on the bench this week, using him as a loop between Trainer and Zach Reid, just to make sure I get Lindsay and Ashcroft. So that shows you where my thinking is. Joel Frazier, number 4 most traded, 6.2k jumping on him this week. I think it's a good option. Looked a little bit lost. Obviously, was playing halfback a bit, then went forward and playing like a bit of a forward role. then was the set backup ruck, and then he played midfield. So he played all 4 positions, which was quite hilarious and sort of didn't surprise me when it comes to Bevo there. But looked really good in the second half, 73-point half, playing a bit more on the midfield. I think he could even see some CBAs over the next few weeks. I think he looked good in the role. I think Bulldogs know he looked good in the role, so I think that they'll persist a little bit with that. So some good cash gen over the next month could be quite good. I think Treloar, they said on the injury report, tonight when I'm recording, or yesterday, obviously when the video goes out, that Treloar 4 to 5 weeks, Bont is 5 to 6 or 6 to 7 or something like that. So still a little bit away, those two. So I think that Joel Frazier could see an increase in CBAs, and it could also hurt a guy that I'm sure is going to be one of the guys traded out in a Riley Sanders. So Joel Frazier, I like. Of who I prefer between De Koning and Frazier, I still think I like Frazier more so because of the fact that if he plays a bit more in the midfield, then I think he could go well. Obviously, De Koning, Stanley, or even, I think Conway's a bit away, but Stanley could come in for that Brisbane and or Melbourne matchups. That's my only concern. Whereas Frazier, I think he's either going to play midfield or halfback. I think that the Bulldogs found out on the weekend, not a good forward, not a good backup ruck, but he's a good, decent midfielder when he's got the opportunity, and also a good halfback flanker. So I think one of those two roles, and if he's even rotating between the two, then that's going to be a great role for fantasy and for scoring. So I think I prefer Frazier, but I do like both there. Max Hall, number 5, 5.8k, jumping on him. I think it's as simple as, if you've got Lindsay and Ashcroft, I think Max Hall is a solid option. I think James, obviously, Shuckers, made a good point last night that he's a bit worried about his job security with the fact they've got Max King, Mitch Owens, Dan Butler, Cooper Sharman, guys like that returning in like 2-3 weeks. But I think Max Hall did enough against the Crows that he's bought himself a few weeks at least. And with a minus 14 break even, you don't, even if he plays 2 weeks and scores a couple of 50s, he's making about 100 or so K, right? So you might as well jump on if you don't have him, make a bit of cash, and you can always downgrade him to the next guy. And if he was to pop a 70 or an 80 again, he's got Geelong, then he goes Richmond. So he could put up a couple of good scores and make some good cash pretty quickly and get up to 450, 500k. So I like him. I'd be jumping on if you don't have a Lindsay and an Ashcroft. He's a good downgrade target to be looking at this week. Mid-forward flexibility as well was really, really handy in a year like this, where it doesn't seem there's a lot of flexibility with our rookies. Tom De Koning there, I think he is a high priority if you don't have him and you've got a failed other ruck. So not a cherry in English, but if you've got a potential English, I know the ball boys are both dealing with the English bullet, but maybe it's a Meek or something like that. I think that you've got to get De Koning in. He looked great, 132. I know Carlton lost, but he really added a lot around the ground, particularly in the second half when he was getting a lot more of the ball. He had like 28 disposals. I think he just offers so much more than Pitney does. Curnow's back this week. I think Curnow, Mackay at forward, Mackay chopping out De Koning in the ruck, and then De Koning being the main ruck. I don't think they need Pitney in the team. So I'm hoping that Carlton see that and he stays in. And you never know, could he be a bit like a Cherry of last year? Maybe not averaging a 114, but can he average 105 and be a guy we keep for a fair while? So De Koning looked really good. And if you don't have him, he is a very, very good option. Mitch Nevitt, number 7, 2.8k, jumping on him. I like him. Could fit some structures better than... It really comes down to him and De Koning. It comes down to team structure, right? Because a lot of people, their midfields are almost full. So if they've got a Levi Ashcroft and a Lindsay, they've probably got a Camperelli as well, and they've probably got a Finn O'Sullivan. So let's say that's your utility, 2 bench spots and 1 rookie on field. Maybe you've got no Driscoll, and you get Nevitt as well, but then you might have a few of these other guys. It might be tricky to fit these guys in. Maybe a Layla as well is another guy you're looking at. So can you fit Nevitt in? That's the question. I think he looked good. 103. Is the tackle sustainable? That's obviously the question. He had 11. But if he can average 80, doesn't really matter. He's got that big 103 in the price cycle. He's priced at 481k. I like him as an option. Obviously, I can't jump on him this week. But if you can, I do like him as an option. So, I'd be more than happy to be jumping on him. I don't know where a Nathan O'Driscoll is on this list. Looking here, he looks a little bit, actually looks a bit down, actually. He's down at a fair bit down. Only 581 people jumping on him. I like him. I really like him as an option. Young's out for another few weeks still. Break-even's low. He's a bit more obviously highly owned than a Never is, but he had the third most CBAs. I think it was only like a couple behind like the top guys. So I'm a big fan of bringing him in, and I'd bring him in over Never, I think. I like the role better. I think it's... I think he's still going to be the number 4 maybe guy when they have all their guys back like a Young's back. So I think it'll be obviously Brayshaw, Sarong, Young will be the 3. And I think O'Driscoll's the number 4. I think he might have overtaken a few of the other guys in there for the fact of how many CBAs he played. So he'll still spend time on the wing, but particularly at Optus Stadium, I think the wing role is not actually that bad. We've seen Jeremy Sharp put up some good scores, and O'Driscoll, I think, will have a higher floor because he'll get some CBAs. He's not going to get as high as that when a guy like Jaiden Young's back, but I still see him getting a handful, maybe 10, 12 CBAs a game, even when Young's back, because Young and Sarong have been shown that they're going to be playing a little bit forward as well, like forward stints. So we saw it from Young last year. We've seen it Sarong in the preseason so far, so I think both could have those roles. So O'Driscoll, I'd prefer over Nevitt, but if you've got O'Driscoll already, I do like Nevitt there as an option as well. Number 8, Bailey Smith, 2.1k. I partly don't know why you wouldn't have started the Bailey Smith. I just think he was so underpriced. Even if he went 80, he was priced at 58. There's 22 points of upside. But even still, if you don't have him, he is the number 1 priority to get in. I think you're getting a top 6 forward priced at 653k. So he's priced at 64, 65. And you're getting a guy that's going to be a top 6 forward. Could average out well over 100 based on what I saw on the weekend. He's now 73% owned. If you don't have him, you have to get him in. And I think you go him and Ashcroft. If you don't have him, Ashcroft, Lindsay. But I doubt there'd be many teams out that don't have Bailey Smith and Ashcroft, or at least one of them. So, yeah, I think, but if you don't have all 3, I think you probably go Bailey Smith and Ashcroft as the 2 priorities, and then Lindsay would be 3rd. Number 9, Luke Traynor. Very good option if you are looking for a defender downgrade. I think Sam Taylor down to him makes a lot of sense if you've got like a Pryor on field, Taylor on the bench, or Taylor on field, Pryor on the bench, and Zach Reid. I think Luke Traynor, as I said, makes a lot of sense. Banks you 300 and a bit K. I think it's a really good downgrade there. And he looked pretty good. And I think if the ball's back in Richmond's defence a bit more than what it was, he could even have bigger scores. With 62 and a Richmond win, could even see some bigger scores. I don't think he's necessarily going to average 80, for example, but if he can average 60, 65, I think that's a decent enough D6 for at least the next month or 6 weeks. So I like him. Josh Simpkin, 1.5k jumping on him. He's the 10th most traded-in player of the week. If you don't have Rankin, I prefer Rankin. If you don't have, obviously, Bailey Smith and Caleb Daniel and who was the other one? Jack McRae. If you don't have those 3 guys there, I'd prefer them more. But Josh Simpkin is a bit of a unique pick. I think I still also prefer Horn, France and Rankin. But if you've got those 5 and you're looking for someone to run at your forward line or bring someone in the midfield that has got a bit of flexibility that you can use around, I think Josh Simpkin's not a bad option. Didn't have as much midfield time, obviously, as we know. His role's a bit more going to be forward. But he still looked really good. Got up the ground, got some marks, went to stoppages even though he didn't start in the CBA. So I think he's an option that you can definitely consider for your team for sure. So the top 10. So just some other players of note. Jai Caldwell, I would really like as an option. Just sucks he's got that round 4 bye. So I don't know if we can. I don't think we can target him when he's missing a game. Particularly the fact he's got Adelaide and then Port Adelaide, then a bye. Not great matchups, but after that it opens up Melbourne, West Coast, Collingwood, North Melbourne. Sydney not great, but then Bulldogs, Richmond. It's really, really good besides that Sydney matchup there. So I think after his bye, he could have been an option. It's just he's going to be too expensive. He's going to be... Sorry, excuse me. So I think he's just going to be too expensive. So I think if you've got him, great. I think he's going to be a real pod. So if you really want to go for a pod and you're happy to wear the week and you want to cover him with a couple of rookies, obviously loop between the 2, you could definitely do a lot worse. I just don't know about paying $1 million for a player that is going to be on a bye. That's my only concern. But Caldwell was great, and I think he will be good this year. Interesting, Jack Henry, 117, obviously a great score, but obviously he's been brought in by Feedham. What's his break even? Is it quite low? What's his price? 610. Oh, his break even's at 20. Okay. But yeah, I thought maybe it might have been like minus or something. But yeah, obviously not an option I don't think we're considering there. Sam Layla, not a bad option. I'd prefer a Lucas Cambrelli, who's next on that list. Obviously, he's got a 76, and I think his scoring will be a little bit... He's got more of a ceiling. But Sam Layla, obviously, his job security is great. I think obviously, the concern is that Richmond won. He kicked 2 goals, and he scored a 68. He's not going to kick 2 goals every week. Richmond aren't going to win every week. I do think, though, that could be offset a little bit by some increased CBAs. I don't see him being a 60, 70, 80% CBA guy, but I could see it being a 40-60 split mid-forward. Maybe it's a 50-50 split. But I do see him getting more than 2 CBAs. I think that they're going to want to get him a little bit more in the midfield. I think it was just first game. Obviously, had a few weeks off. I think they want to get him through, see how he went. But I think of what he showed, I think that Richmond could definitely use him in the CBAs more than 2 times. So, yeah, so it might be offset. Good option if you've already got a Lindsay and an Ashcroft and a Camporelli, and maybe you've got a few of them on field and you want someone on your bench, then Sam Layla could definitely be a guy you consider, but definitely not a must-have by any stretch. Saligo was good. I don't know, what's his price, like 900-ish, somewhere around there. 827. He's cheap. Power's not that much more expensive. I think I prefer a Tom Powell over Jake Saligo. I like Jake Saligo, obviously, as a Crows fan. I just think Dawson and Rankin are probably going to score more points more consistently. Obviously, the one thing that Saligo did well, though, was he tackled well. 8 tackles, 3 marks. That had been a knock on him last year, that he wasn't really tackling or marking a lot. So if he can raise his tackle numbers and mark numbers, he could break out into that sort of 90-plus range. But, yeah, I don't know about his long-term prospects there. Zach Reid, good option if you haven't got him. Isaac Rankin, yeah, I really like him. I wish I went him over Horn Francis. I know Horn Francis got a good matchup this week, but as a Crows fan, I just should have gone Rankin. I really should have. 107 looked really good. Dawson playing as well as he is, I don't think he's going to cop as much attention, Rankin. There will be games he does, but maybe Dawson's the guy that cops it a bit more now. Priced, I think, at like 84, 85, maybe 83 around there. I think he's a good option in the forward line. A Sanders to Rankin trade makes a lot of sense this week. Won't cost you heaps, and you're getting a top 6 to 8 forward, so I like that. Other guys here, Harry Boyd, a big guy I'd be looking at. If you don't have him as R3s, I think he's going to make some good cash. Marshall looked really underdone. I think Boyd will be the solo ruck for at least the next 2 to 3 weeks, and could even be for longer. Tom Powell I really like. 121 looked good. Obviously, the only flag you could say is he played Bulldogs with no Bont or Treloar. So, tougher matchup against Melbourne this week with obviously Viney, Oliver and Petrarca there. But I like him. Low break even. He's shown it all pre-season. I'd be more than happy to jump on him. Will Day to Tom Powell trade, again, makes a lot of sense. And there's plenty of other options here. I could be talking about them all day. Like I've said, like Holmes and Nasira are not bad options if you want to go Taylor or Perryman up to them. I just don't know if you want to spend that much at this point, but they're both at a decent enough price. Riley Bice I want to watch this week. If he scores well, you get a free look, right? He didn't go up. I don't think he went up very much at all, if at all. Yeah, went up 10K, 17 break even. Okay, if he goes well, it'll be 280, 290K, but you get that look. He's got a buy, and then a few guys might come back if he's not the sub in that game after. So who's he got posted by? Yeah, North Melbourne at Marvel, right? So if he's not the sub in that game, he will be a very, very popular downgrade option. And I'm looking at potentially, if I've got a Sam Taylor still in round 4, I might be able to go Taylor down to Bice and make some serious cash. So that's something I'm definitely considering, and something that you guys definitely could consider. I don't know if I would necessarily take the leap straight away, but yeah. Obviously, so yeah, I'm just seeing Sydney play North Melbourne in round 4 on the Saturday night, and Sam Taylor plays on the Sunday, for example. So you could definitely make that trade and see if he's sub before making that call. So yeah, something I definitely like. Dawson, I think if you wanted Dawson, you had to start with him, right? I don't know if you're paying, 1.1 or nearly 1.1 million at this time of the year. He looked fantastic, and I think he's in for a big year. I just don't know if I would be paying near 1.1 million at this point of the year. We're looking for value. I think there's if you have every single option I've talked about, potentially you could look at it. But I think there is a option that's value that I would rather go for over a Dawson. But hey, very, very good last week. And as I said, I could talk about a lot more players, but for the sake of time, I don't want to be going for an hour and a half for these videos. For the sake of time, we'll go the most traded out players. So starting at the top is Harry Perryman. Nearly 14K have said goodbye. I think the most common trade this week is going to be Perryman to SDK. I don't know if I'm as harsh as trading out a Perryman and want to be as reactive to trade him, right? If you're in a good position and haven't got many issues, you've got a Lindsay and an Ashcroft, and you've got these rookies, and Perryman's an issue. Perryman SDK makes a lot of sense. Perryman even to a Holmes or even a Stewart or a Sicily or someone like that makes sense as well to upgrade him. I just think, though, that he's going to get more CBAs. I cannot see Ned Long being the number 1 CBA attendee with all these guys. Obviously, DeGoey, I think I've read somewhere that he could be back this week for Collingwood, and that might be the case. I just think that Perryman played midfield all pre-season. They recruited him to be a midfielder. I just can't see them going away from that. And I think he'll be better this week. Got the Dogs. There's not really an obvious tag guy that he would necessarily stand next to. So I think he'll have a better score this week. And you can reassess next week. It's a bit of a free hit. He's got the buy in round 3 anyway. You can have a look at him, see how he goes. And if he goes well, you can hold. If he doesn't, you can trade him. But as I said, if you've got a team that's all good and you don't have many issues, I think he could definitely go break even 92 and you can jump to someone that's going to either make cash or be a top 6 to 8 defender. So Sam Taylor next, 8.3k, jumping off him. Yep, if you can do it, that's ideal. Made 83k. And if you can train this week, you can take the 83k and run. That's great. I'm obviously in a situation where I need Lindsay and Ashcroft. I can't trade Taylor to one of them, so I've got to hold him this week. I can loop between a Reed and Trainer, but if you've got the ability and most people have got an Ashcroft or a Lindsay, one of them, I think Taylor SDK makes a lot of sense as well. If you've got Perryman and Taylor and go one of them, I'd rather go Taylor to SDK and wait on Perryman for a week because at the end of the day, Taylor you don't want to be holding. Whereas Perryman, if he goes well, you might be able to hold him for a bit longer. Hugo Garcia's next, 5.1k, jumping off him, the third most traded out player for the week. So he was priced at 42 and he scored a 59, right? We wanted more. But he did put 17 points of upside up, which is a positive. Again, the negative is that St Kilda got beaten badly. He was quiet for a lot of the game. He saved his score. He scored almost half of his score in the last quarter. He just didn't have a lot of tackles, though. He was still in a tight midfield mix of like 4 or 5 guys. So I still see him getting a lot of midfield time. It's just his time on ground, right? That's low. 61% game time. I just think that as people... And he gave 3 free kicks away. On another day, that's a 7 in. We're not really complaining too much about that. So I think the fact he scored 59 as well from 61% time on ground is good. St Kilda can't continue... They're in a obviously rebuilding phase. They've got a lot of injuries. Are we really going to be sitting here saying that they're going to be prioritising guys like Zach Jones and Hunter Clark, who's always injured, and guys like that, over guys like Hugo Garcia, who's 19 and is going to be looking like going to be a good player for St Kilda? I still think he won't be dropped. I don't think he'll be sub. I think that, okay, might have late game time, but I think he'll be better than 59. I'd probably give him another week. A little bit the same with Perryman, though. If you've got everything all good, and you can go Garcia down to a Lindsay, and even if you need Guesty down to Lindsay and that gives you the cash to go up to an Ashcroft or get another player, then by all means you can trade him. But I still think there is a well where you could hold for a week, see how he goes, and trade after. Lockie Ash, I'd be happy trading. 3.5k jumping off him. Okay, he scored a 60, 63. He's not going to be number one distributor. That's going to be Whitfield. I don't think he's going to necessarily go and average 95 now for the rest of the year. Okay, he got a 63 against Melbourne in the wet, so there is an excuse for that. I just don't think he's going to be a top 6, top 8 defender. I think I'd be taking the cash and running. And you can go him easily to SD, go down to SDK, make some cash. You can make some cash from Ash. Or you go him to, like guys like a Max Holmes, Tom Stewart, Nasai Wanganeen Miller aren't that far away from him. So if you want to get a solid defender in, if you didn't start at Jaiden Short, I still wouldn't be opposed to bringing him in. I think he'll be a lot better than the 85 he scored. I'd be more than happy to trade him. That's for sure. I think James Leake has to go. What did he score? Like 11, 14, really, really low score. Yeah, 14. He's got to go. He made 18k, obviously with the double price rise. Break-even's 24. He could be the sub. No, sorry. He's got the buy this week, obviously. But then after, a lot of guys come back from suspension. A few guys with tests, so they could be back. He might not even be the team in round 3. So I'd be trading if you can. If you don't have a trainer or a Zach Reed, I'd go to them. Even a Jackson Pryor, you could go. But I'd be going James Leake out if you can. Because if you've got Leake and a Reed, you may not have a trainer. Maybe you had a Sam Taylor, a De Koning, or a Jackson Pryor on the bench. So you might not have one. But if you've got like a couple of rookies and stuff and you can go him up to a SDK, that'd be ideal. Maybe it's like a Sanders or a Hollands or something like that down and you use that cash to go Leak up to an SDK or something like that. That's what I'd look at doing. Connor Stone, a little bit less, more of a priority to trade. Obviously, he hasn't been scoring huge. 40 on the weekend. The weather obviously played a bit of a part in that. I think he'll still be there. I know there are guys coming back, but they're not really defenders. A lot of them are forwards, so I'm more worried about the forward guys. I still think Stone will play in defence. He's been looking okay, but there is a chance he's not there, and he's a red dot. So that's something to keep an eye on and could be a guy we trade in round 3. I think I'd just hold, though, because if you are playing a rookie on field in the forward line, you can loop between 2 players. Like, for example, I've got a Davidson and a Wicks. You may have a Max Hall. Like, you might have 2 forwards you better loop this week in between. So I'd look at doing that. I wouldn't be trading Cornerstone. We've definitely got bigger issues. He's still got to break even to 6. If he's in the team, he's going to make more cash. Angus Hasty is traded up by 2.6k. He's a very interesting one, right? So my mood at that Crows game, Crows Saints game, because obviously I was there from a fantasy point of view. At quarter time, my head was massive. Crows were going really well. Hasty was on 31 at quarter time, which is massive. Dawson was on 41. Then all of a sudden, Dawson gets taken by Windhagen in the second quarter. Hasty scores 9 points and then gets subbed out. So from a fantasy standpoint, my mood completely shifted. It's concerning that he got subbed out at halftime. Whether that's something that is happening off the field or he did something, I don't know. But the role looked really good. Like it almost looked like the Riley Bonner type role from last year. The third guy back there. Like I'm going him up to Lindsay because I think him and Lindsay and Ashcroft are the guys I need. So I'm going him up to one of them. But I don't necessarily think you have to trade. If he's named in the 22 and not the sub, I think he showed enough in the first quarter. I struggled to see why he got subbed out. There are, as I said before, with Garcia, like they've got guys like Brad Hill had one disposal at halftime. Like Zach Jones, like no impact. Like Hunter Clark was the sub, so he came on. But St Kilda got players that just don't do much impact. Whereas Hasty, a young player as well, 19, like Garcia, showed a bit in that first quarter. So if he could do that, he might be able to score some solid scores. So even though I'm trading him out, he's even still a guy I'm going to be watching. Because if I need money at some point, I think I could downgrade to him. But at the end of the day, I need Lindsay and Ashcroft, so that's why he is going for me at this stage. Harvey Langford's got to go. He was a sub, so his break-even obviously shot up. He dropped a bit in cash. He would have dropped a bit in cash as well. Yeah, dropped 15k. Sub, he could be a guy we're talking about at some point to bring in. If he's not the sub, he'll obviously drop in price, might drop under 300k, and then if he can have a good score or two, we might be talking about him as a trade-in option. But if you've got him, he's got to go. Him to Lindsay would be a trade that makes a lot of sense there. Or if you don't have an Ashcroft or even a Lawler, Camporelli, there's guys. I'd have Camporelli ahead of Lawler, but they're probably 4 guys if you don't have them. I'd be preferring. So we get to a few interesting players here. So Riley Sanders is someone that I'm concerned about. No Bont, no Treloar, so you would expect him to be as like the number 2 or 3 guy along with a Libran and Ed Richards. He had 10 of his 14 CBAs were in the first half, but then Fraser went to the midfield, looked good, and he only had 4 CBAs in the second half, which was concerning. The fact that Bont and Treloar will come back in will mean if he's the third guy behind Libba and Richards, if he's the third guy now, that means he's the 5th guy when those guys come back. Like, Bont is ahead of him, Libba's ahead of him, Treloar's ahead of him, and Ed Richards is ahead of him. So it means he's the 5th guy. And if we saw on the weekend what we saw, where we saw he was behind Kennedy, well, he's equal with Kennedy, and Fraser wasn't that far behind CBAs. If Kennedy has more or Fraser has more, then all of a sudden we're looking at the 6th guy, and maybe he's on the bench, maybe he's a sub, maybe he's not even in the team. That's the question. I still think he's in the 22. I think he's at least a forward, but it's just concerning. If he's playing more as a forward, he's not going to be scoring that well. He saved his score late to get to that 72, kicked 2 goals to get there, so I'm happy trading him, and he is a guy I'm potentially looking at trading this week. Meek, happy to trade him to TDK. If you don't have him, that's the trade to do, because if you've got Meek, you've probably started a Cherry or a Gorn or an English. I don't think you started TDK and Meek, and if you did, you could go up, maybe go to Gorn with some good matchups to come. I don't know if I'd trade into Cherry, too expensive at this point, and some tougher matchups to come. Maybe you hold Meek for another week. He's got Carlton, good matchup, and then maybe you go to Briggs off the bike. Well, actually, no, not off the bike, because you want to drop a bit, but that's your parachute option. Obviously, Sweet against Richmond. I don't love trading him in, and I think Meek to Sweet's a wasted trade. So if you don't have TDK, I'd probably almost hold Meek for the time being, and just maybe for a few weeks. And if you can go okay, maybe you go to Briggs when he's a bit cheaper. So Finn O'Sullivan, few people didn't have him. Trading him, obviously, people had him and trading him out. I don't know if I'd trade him out. Obviously, a few people are probably going him to Lindsay or Ashcroft if you don't have him. I think there are other rookies I could trade because, okay, he scored a 51. North Melbourne didn't do a lot of chipping around the back. He played half back. He had that role. Really, really positive. There's better days ahead than that 51. So, and 51's not awful. Made 14k. I think he'll make more money. But something to watch. If he just goes along at 40s and 50s, then obviously, yes, he's a trade, but I think he'll be better than that 51. Other guys, Callahan, obviously went for his buy, but what did he score? What did he get, like a 90? 92. He's an option post his buy. I don't know if he's necessarily a fantasy player, just because I think he gets a lot of the ball, but doesn't really hit all the stat lines, doesn't get those marks and tackles. 4 and 2 and then 1 and 3. Not amazing. And obviously the only difference between the difference between the weeks is the fact that he kicked the 2 goals compared to no goals in the last week. So I think he's somewhere in the 90s, and he's still priced at, 84, 85. If you see him going 100 plus, he's a good pick post his buy. But if you see him more as a 90, 95 guy, and he only went 110 with the goals, then maybe you don't worry about it. But he's definitely someone you can consider post to buy. So, yeah, that's for sure. And he obviously doesn't play this week, so you're not looking at bringing him in. I don't know if I'd trade him out, though. Marshall, got to go. High priority. If you've got him, he's like the must trade. If you've got him, I doubt that you have TDK. So Marshall to TDK is probably the easiest trade you'll make. His break-even's huge, 163. He's playing forward, which isn't great. He could get forward stats, which is going to be good for us. But for fantasy, you've got to trade. He might not even play this week, but he's dropping cash and dropping cash fast. He could be 900k in a couple of weeks' time. So he's got to go. He looked very underdone. Keep an eye on it though, as a guy to look at. Even if he's just a ruck, at some point I think he'll get back to better scoring ways, and he'll be at a cheap price where we can jump on at that point. But for now, you've definitely got to get off. Hewitt can go. Scored a foot. Actually, not can go. But if he's in your utility and you don't have a Lindsay or an Ashcroft, he can go. You could go realistically him down to Hall. Hall's going to make a lot more cash. I don't know if Hewitt's necessarily going to be this 60-65 goal we maybe thought he could have been with some more CBA. So he can go. A bit team dependent. He's not a must trade though, because he still made a tiny bit of cash there. Grzewski could go on his buy. He was a sub. Didn't make a lot of cash at all, I don't think. A few people looking at that -5 break even or whatever he had. But then he was a sub, so it didn't even matter. So, yeah, he went up 27k. I'd take it. I'd trade him. Go to Max Hall. Not going to cost you much more if you can get that done. Hollands. See, yeah, and these will be the last 2 parts I touch on, obviously, because Hollands and Day are here. I wouldn't be trading Ashcroft's got a good run coming up. Between Hollands and Day, Hollands, I've got more positive sort of thinking towards him moving forward. He scored a 72, but I don't know if he could have been more burnt if he tried. Carlton were bad. They were missing targets. All their defence were just banging the ball forward. I think Hollands will be better. I think he's more an 85, 90 guy, so he's definitely still got points of upside. It sucks that the 72's there and the cash gen doesn't get kicked off straight away. I'll be holding for another week or two. If he puts up another couple of 70's, then you can look at trading. I think he's a low priority, but if you need his cash to go down to an Ashcroft to go like a Hasty up to a Lindsay, I could tick it off. Definitely. But I think if you've got like a Will Day or a who's the other player? Riley Sanders, if he's in your midfield, I'd prefer to trade those two. I'd prefer to trade Will Day, I think, over Hollands. I've obviously got Will Day as an option for me to trade this week. He's got Carlton this week. Potentially a Hewitt tag could be coming. Then he's got Bedford there in round 3. Then a bye, then Port. Obviously, I know it opens up after that, but at the end of the day, his cash will stall. So I'm probably looking at holding this week reluctantly. He'll get a tag, but you can always trade next week. He might make a tiny bit of cash, but he's got the ability to pump out 100, right? So maybe hold for a week, see how he goes. But if you want to get a step ahead of the comp, trade him a week early. I don't think he's going to burn you. I don't see him putting up 130s, 140s. I know he went 129, but that was a bit of a freaky shaft. He kicked 3 goals there, scored 96, and then he got tagged. And if he's scoring 96 points and a half, you better believe he's being the best player on the ground, and he's a big problem for the opposition, and they're going to put time in him. So I don't see him putting a 140 up or anything like that. But then again, part of me hopes he does, because then he can make some cash for us all. But yeah, I'd be happy enough to trade him. Even if you go him down to Ashcroft and Hasty to Lindsay and you've got like 350, 400k in the bank, it's not the worst thing. You can use that cash next week. You've got to get these rookies in. But most people have got, as I said, have got an Ashcroft already. So maybe you go Hasty to Lindsay and you go like a Will Day to a Tom Powell. Or maybe you go to a Petrarca or a Nevitt. O'Driscoll. I'm trying to think of other players. Tom Powell. Maybe someone like that. Maybe you go to one of those. Did I say Tom Powell already? I probably did say Tom Powell already. But even if I didn't, you got all those guys there. I think there are a lot better options that you can have in your team than a Will Day, but he isn't a must trade. I think he's probably a low priority for people. And I wouldn't be trading Whitfield, by the way. It's a premium. You're starting for a reason, so you're not trading him at this point. So they're the most trade in and out players. In terms of trade targets, it is so difficult this week to give trade targets. It was my top 5 targets for the week. I will give my top 5 targets, but it is very, very team dependent. A lot of these players are good options to bring in, and it just depends what you need, right? So in terms of order, though, Levi Ashcroft's number 1. You have to get him in. He's going to make bulk cash. He's going to score well as well. I think you need him. Xavier Lindsay's number 2. Similar to Ashcroft. Probably not going to score as well as Ashcroft in terms of over the season, but he definitely could put up some big scores. Could be really useful in best 18. Oh, God. Could be good in best 18. So, Lindsay for me is number 2. Number 3 is where it starts to get a little trickier. I'm not going to count Bailey Smith or whatever just because everyone's got him, and if you don't have him, he's number 1. And I won't include Tom Koning because most people have got him. But he would probably be a very, very high up there as well. Number 3 for me would be, I'd go O'Driscoll. I think his role was really good. I think he's best 22, and I think he still gets he'll still get some CBAs even when Young comes back. So for me, he would be number 3. Number 4, I'll go I'll go Joel Frazier because I prefer Joel Frazier. So I'll go him number 4. I know that there's some Dogs players coming back. I still think plays half-back and will average around the 80 mark. If he gets some CBAs, I think that average could maybe be 85. And I just feel safer with him over Koning because I know Koning went well, but he does have McInerney next week, and then he's got Gawn, and I'm a bit worried about that. Geelong have said they can change their ruck, so that's why I prefer Frazier there at 4. And I think Koning is number 5 at that point. I just think, okay, even though the rucks may come in, he'll still score well enough to make a lot of cash. And you can trade him in 2-3 weeks' time if the worst comes to worst and Stanley comes in. Trade him, and you can trade up to a decent enough defender option. I guess Mitch Nevitt, Max Hall are the guys that are just outside the top 5 that I like. Nevitt, I wouldn't mind watching again just to see how he goes, but St Kilda's another good matchup. I'd be more than happy jumping into him this week. And Max Hall, obviously can make good cash. Obviously, the job security thing's the only question, but he played really well on the weekend. I think he's bought himself a few weeks, so I do like him as well, particularly if you've got an Ashcroft and a Lindsay and a Camporelli already. I didn't include Camporelli just because I assume that most people have got him, but if you don't, again, I'd prefer him over a few of the options here as well. And I also like a few of the other guys as well, but I'll leave it at that because I could be going for a lot longer, and this video's already gone long enough. How long's it gone for? Yeah, it's gone for nearly 40 minutes. That's as long. I don't want it to be going any longer. In terms of my trades this week, at this current moment in time, I am going Riley Sanders down to Levi Ashcroft. Just got need him, and I'm going Hasty up to Lindsay because I need him as well. And there's not really another midfield I would trade down to Lindsay. I don't want to go like Day and Sanders down, or like Sanders and Hollands down. So for me, Hasty, his cash installed. Okay, if he goes an 80 this week, which would be typical fantasy, trade him out, he goes 80, then I'm looking at bringing him in next week. I just think for the cash gen this week, I need Lindsay in my team. So that's what I'm looking at doing. I've looked at potentially going a Will Day out over a Sanders. That leaves me with a bit more cash. I think with the trades I'm looking at doing, going a Sanders to Ashcroft and Hasty to Lindsay. I'm just quickly doing it now because I can't remember exactly how much cash that leaves me with. It's like 190-something K from memory. So here we go. So I'm just doing it quickly now. So Sanders out for Ashcroft. Yep, there is Levi. And then Hasty to Lindsay. That leaves me with Lindsay 193K. But the other trade's like 390K. So I prefer doing these trades, I think. And at the end, I can trade Will Day next week. End of the day, I'm going to trade Day next week. There you go. Pardon the pun. So that's what I'm looking at doing. There's not really... I could go to Koning, Taylor SDK, but I just think Lindsay and Ashcroft are the priorities for me this week. It sucks not doing that. You guys have heard it already plenty of times. Not doing that week's Ashcroft trade is really going to cost me. I feel like I'm a week behind. So no SDK, no Nevitt, no Powell, no Max Hall. There's probably a couple of others I'm not bringing in. So it sucks. But the end of the day, that's fantasy. Got to keep going. Got to use your trades and keep moving forward. So that's what I'm looking at doing. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you guys doing with your trades this week. And if you've got any trade questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you disagree with any of my thoughts on any of the most traded in or out players, let me know in the comments as well. Be keen to hear your thoughts on any of those players there. But any questions you got, I'll answer them as well. If you'd also like your questions answered, head over to patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics and become a Patreon member at AFL Fantasy Fanatics. You get heaps of bonus content in the season. You get there's bonus Q&As throughout the year, and you get free team reviews throughout the whole season through the Ask Me on Q service. Patreon members get it for free. So yeah, if you want to become a Patreon now and join in, then make sure you hit the link in the description below. But make sure you guys smash the like on the video. That'd be very much appreciated. Obviously, Trade Talk's back. It's your guys' favorite video, most popular video on the channel. So for that and returning, smash the like on the video. It takes 2 seconds, and it really, really helps us out the channel. Make sure you subscribe as well. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers. So I believe we're just over 600. So it's climbed up pretty quickly to 3,500. So we're getting closer. If we can hit 4K is the goal by the end of the season. So if we join the 4K club, that'd be great. Make sure you subscribe. And yeah, we're back tomorrow for our captain's video, as we always do on the Thursday. And then Friday, we obviously have our pre-lockout chat. And we might even have a watch song on the Thursday night or the Friday night, even a Saturday. There'll be a few watch songs. So I'm looking at maybe doing 2 a week, depending on my plans and stuff. But the more watch songs, the better. Obviously, there could be weeks where we do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So make sure you guys tune into those as well. Good fun as we watch the players' scores tick over and chat with you guys, answer any questions, or just generally talk about footy. So it's always good. So be cool. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, as always. And we'll catch you guys tomorrow for our captain's video. So thanks, everyone. I'll catch you then. See ya.